duty I have to do about once every 3 years before the general conference, and this is my first time. I'm a little nervous. Jonelle Neighbors' shoes are very big to fill, so yeah. So anyway, next slide. So we have an agenda that I'm going to try to keep to really quickly there. First of all, a lot of you don't know what I do, so I'm going to quickly talk to you a little bit about what my role is. I'm going to talk to you about a few changes that have happened to the General Conference. I'm going to give kind of a Cliff Notes version of the UFMCC General Conference structure, General Denominational structure, because a lot of the amendments we're going to be talking about and the governing board nominees are part of that structure, and so by giving you that context, it'll help. This is overly simplified. I want to stress that, okay? But it should hopefully help the person who's new to the denomination understand. And then, of course, going through the bylaws amendments that are proposed. There are 4 of them. And then talking very briefly about the governing board candidates. So next slide, please. So my role as lay delegate is often kind of shrouded a little bit in mystery. A lot of people don't know what I do. I will admit, even before I got the role, I wasn't entirely certain what I was going to be doing. And thankfully, Jonelle allowed me to kind of shadow her for a couple of years, and that really helped with that process. But this is a 3-year term. I get elected at the lay delegate specifically gets elected at the general meeting that we have in December after a year where we have a general conference, and then it goes until the next congregational meeting after the general conference there. My job is to basically serve as the official representative of the church to the denomination there. And this means that I am expected to attend general conference as well as to attend all the network gatherings. Pikes Peak MCC is a member of the Mountain and Plains Network that includes churches from Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and Minnesota. And we get together at least once a year. The idea was that we'd get together in person, although COVID has changed that to regular Zoom meetings. But I attend all of those and try to be our representative to those. Now, I do want to stress the congregation is more than welcome to attend the Zoom meetings and even go to those network gatherings, but I am your official person to make sure that somebody is there. It is also my job to ensure that information that comes from the denomination is shared with the congregation as appropriate. And this is part of my duties because the General Conference is a big time when a lot of information does come out. And it's also my job to vote as the official representative of the church in the lay house of the denomination there. Pastor Alicia will be voting as part of the clergy house, so she is in essence our other representative, but her role as pastor is different than my role as lay delegate. So next slide, please. So this year, there are some changes to General Conference that you should be aware of. First of all, General Conference is held every 3 years as a way to get the denomination together for some fellowship, worship, workshops, but it is also time to handle the business of the denomination, things that really need the whole denomination to get together and discuss. And originally, the business meeting, the business part of it, was handled at the same time as the General Conference in the same location, and anybody voting had to be physically present to cast their vote. Well, over the years, it became very apparent that this was cost prohibitive for many churches to get all their representatives out to the General Conference and to be able to vote. And so before the 2019 General Conference, they instituted a procedure to allow for virtual voting. And when we elected the new moderator, many people were in attendance, but many people attended virtually and voted. In fact, Pastor A was one of those people who voted virtually, whereas our previous lay delegate, Jonelle Neighbor, actually was present. And that way, it was able to encourage and promote participation from all across the denomination. The denomination has churches all over the world, and so having everybody gather together in one place was difficult. This year, due to COVID concerns, both the general conference and the business meeting are going to be held virtually. And it was decided even before the virtual change happened that the business meeting would be held later than the general conference in a separate session that was entirely virtual. And so the general conference is actually next weekend, which is July 1st through the 3rd. And the business meeting, there is going to be a forum where we are going to theoretically discuss stuff on July 7th. And then the formal business meeting will be on July 16th. And then the virtual voting will officially start on July 18th. And that is when Pastor Alicia and I will fulfill our roles to vote. So this is different, but I think it's a good change. I think it's going to very significantly promote participation, especially in voting in the matters of the denomination. So. Mm-hmm. Yes. I will actually not be present for that. The network, the Mountains and Plains. Oh, yes. So we are allowed to do, in essence, group viewings of the virtual live stream general conference. And so please watch your emails. They will have it set up so that anybody who chooses to come to this church are going to be able to view as a group, which will help that out. And as I was about to point out there, I'm actually not going to be here for that live streaming because I am going to Omaha, where the Mountains and Plains Network has decided to do their own network gathering at the same time and have us live stream at MCC Omaha together. And so I'm going to go there as part of my role as lay delegate to network and to participate in that. So, okay. Any other questions about what was just announced about these changes before we move on? Okay, next slide, please. So once again, the structure of the MCC, very oversimplified. I want to stress this, okay. Our moderator is Reverend Elder Cecilia Eggleston. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. She was elected to the role at the 2019 General Conference and has been doing the job ever since then. As moderator, she works with the governing board, which is roughly analogous to our board of directors, in that they, with the moderator, handle the business of the denomination. They focus on the finances, they focus on policy and everything else there. It is made up of 4 clergy members and 4 lay members who serve 6-year terms elected at a general conference. And then every 3 years, half the governing board is up for re-election. And so that is what we'll be dealing with when we talk about the governing board nominations a little bit later in this presentation, is the 4 open slots that will need to be filled at that time. There is also a board of elders, and they are more on working with the moderator on matters of spiritual guidance. They put out calls to worship. They often put out spiritual interpretations of current events matters as a way there of that. Elders are appointed by the moderator and then are confirmed by the governing board and the general conference. Elders are mostly clergy, but are lay people as well. There are lay elders. It just is dependent on who is best viewed by the moderator to serve the needs of a role of elder. There are no set number of elders. This was a change that happened when the denomination restructured in 2010. Elders used to be in a position of oversight of geographic regions of the denomination, but those regions have gone away. The elders no longer have that role, but rather serve more as a advisory board on spiritual guidance. Next slide, please. There are two, for lack of a better term, legislative houses. There is the clergy house, which is made up of all ordained clergy and retired clergy of the MCC denomination there. So Pastor Leisha and Pastor Diane are members of that house. And then there is the lay house, which is made up of lay delegates like myself, interim pastoral leaders who are often lay people when a pastor has stepped away and somebody has stepped up to fill the role. And then elders who are lay people, but they aren't clergy and they aren't their church's official lay delegate. And so all house members discuss all business together in a joint business meeting, but then when voting comes, they vote separately, and any measures have to pass by a majority in both houses. Okay, so that is the simplified structure. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay, so now I'm going to show you the text of the bylaw amendments, both the original bylaw and the change there. It is very hard to read on some of these, so we will just quickly show you the text, and then on the next slide, I am going to summarize what the change is, as well as pick some passages out of the very lengthy rationales they gave for each of these to try to explain for it and also to try to give it further context. So next slide. The First Amendment here is making some changes to the definition of the Council of Elders, and as such there. And so the new text is kind of in that weird lime green color. I had hoped it would stand out a little bit better. And then any text being removed there is stricken out in bold. And so if we go to the next slide here, what this change does is it codifies the definition of elder to include current and former members of the Council of Elders, and allows them to ensure that it's interpreted that they retain the title and the privileges of elder. Especially for lay elders, there was some lack of clarity as to when they left the Council of Elders, how their title and role changed. And so that's that. The rationale is that it's as a matter of clarification and equity, and for purposes of alignment with the historic interpretation of this bylaw, this language makes it clear that former lay members of the Council of Elders continue to be professional ministers of the denomination who are authorized to perform all the rites and sacraments of the denomination. So, are there any questions about this amendment? Okay. Next slide. This one actually strikes text from the two sections on there. It actually strikes out section D entirely. And again, it focuses on the roles of an elder. And so if we go to the next slide, what this does is it removes the language that states that elders have oversight of congregations, and it also removes the procedure for filling vacancies on the Council of Elders. And the rationale behind this is that the Council of Elders no longer has oversight duties vis-a-vis the churches. This elder duty was removed in the restructuring of the denomination in 2010. And there is no such thing as a vacancy on the Council of Elders, since the bylaws do not provide a specific number of elders to serve on the Council of Elders. As far as I can tell, this language should have been stricken out when the restructuring happened, but for whatever reason wasn't. So are there any questions on this amendment? Okay. Next slide. So this one, again, changes the function of it. It kind of numbers a few things and adds some sections of the text and crosses out some sections of the text there. If we go to the next slide, this actually makes two key changes. First of all, it makes the definition of the membership of the lay house easier to read by creating a numbered list. And it ensures that current and former lay members of the Council of Elders can vote in the lay house. Okay. Under the current language of this bylaw, only lay elders who are members of the Council of Elders have voice and vote at General Conference. The proposed amendments would allow former lay elders to have a voice and vote at General Conference. Basically, clergy elders, because they are clergy, have a voice and vote regardless of whether they are actively being an elder. Lay members, once again, by leaving the Council of Elders, it seemed to remove that voice and vote, which seemed inequitable. And so I would like to quickly also go to the next slide. They provided a rationale on the use of the honorific title elder, in that it is a custom that former elders hold this honorific title of elder. They are called elder even after they are no longer serving on the Council of Elders there. And they, as long as they continue to abide to the Elder Code of Ethics and the Code of Conduct for MCC ministry leaders. And so it is viewed that as long as they've met those requirements, they shouldn't be treated any differently if they are clergy versus if they are lay elders. So are there any questions, comments on this amendment? That is what the change will make. Currently, if you were a lay elder and you are no longer an active elder on the Council of Elders, you lose that right unless you are the lay delegate of your church. Yes. Okay. I'm going to warn you, this next amendment is a doozy. Okay. It rewrites a significant portion of the bylaws on disaffiliation, on the disaffiliation process. Yes. So, next slide. The first change is that it adds, oops, I meant to make that green and apparently I missed that one, but the first change is that it adds a small amount of text to section 1. Next slide. The second change is it has a gigantic portion of text to the front part of section 2, so much so that I couldn't even put the original portion 2 at the end there. I just kind of trail off with 3 dots. Next slide. This one changes section 3 by adding a whole chunk of text there. Next slide. Small part on section 4. Next slide. 5, significant changes to section 5 there. And next slide, and this one's important, it adds a new section 6 and renumbers the 2 sections that follow it to be section 7 and section 8. This one is going to be probably a little bit controversial, and you'll see why when I explain the changes. So let's go to the slide that actually explains the changes here. So first things first, let me get past all my pages so I can see what the changes are. First things first, it allows for virtual meetings and votes when a church is discerning and deciding to disaffiliate. Okay, if they start the process, it allows for their own membership to meet and vote virtually there, but it also allows for meetings between the denomination and the church to be done virtually as well. It creates a 6-month period during which at least 3 meetings must occur between representatives of the church and the denomination in order to solicit feedback as well as potentially foster reconciliation. Okay, before this, there is no set timeline for these meetings or if these meetings actually had to occur. The church literally had to announce 30 days before the vote that they were deciding this, and then 30 days later have this there. This adds a 6-month period before that in which this discussion should happen. It clarifies the language for allowing members of a disaffiliating church who do not wish to disaffiliate to remain with the MCC. Under the current language, the church has to vote by 2/3 or more to disaffiliate there, but this obviously allows for some members who did not want to disaffiliate there. In the original language, it does allow for them to stay with MCC. This kind of adds and clarifies some of that language to make it clear how that process works and where the resources are. And finally, this new section that I said would likely be a little controversial. It requires a church that disaffiliates to make a contribution of 5% of the value of the church's assets. Under the current bylaw laws there, as long as the church clears any debts that it currently has with the denomination there, they get ownership of the assets. This adds on top of that, okay? And so if we go to the next slide, the rationale here, the idea is that it is designed to add mutual accountability for both the denomination and the local church, and to establish a pathway for healthy and holy conversation to the disaffiliation process. Affiliating and disaffiliating with a denomination should be important markers in the life of a church. There is a process for becoming affiliated, which is in place to help a local body understand all that is expected of an affiliated church in MCC. The relationship between the church and the denomination is a covenant which should not be entered into lightly by either party. The same should be true for disaffiliation. And then next slide. This amendment seeks to offer an opportunity for the congregation and the denomination to mediate their differences and find resolution before the final decision is voted on. In situations where disaffiliation is the faithful decision, this process will hopefully bring healing to both parties and allow each to move forward with peace and a clear sense of purpose. So this is excerpts from their rationale on why this amendment is being proposed. When this amendment was brought up in the discussion circles, there was very positive sentiment towards the 6-month process, encouraging communication there. But when the portion of the amendment was brought up about the 5% contribution, naturally there was a lot of questions. It is unclear what the definitions of assets is in this context. The bylaws do not clearly state what a church's assets would be. And in all other cases in the bylaws that I could find, it indicates that the local church is owner of their assets unless they close, in which the denomination takes over. And that's really the only passage I could find that defines what assets are. That's what was hoped for. The discussion circles that happened 2 weeks ago were designed to get feedback from members of the denomination to try to say, what does this mean? And to allow the original authors of the bylaws to provide clarification. As of yet, I have not seen any clarification. So this is as much information as I have. The 18th is when the official voting happens. And I should point out, as written, this amendment is an all or nothing amendment. There will be no way to carve out parts that we don't want, in essence. Nothing in the rationale specified why the 5% contribution was there, at least nothing I saw. I do appreciate the feedback. I will admit that is the way I am currently leaning, but I will keep an eye out for more information, and that may change my opinion. So. The whole kit and caboodle, as written, it is one amendment. It is not separate amendments. Yes, exactly. Yes, I think the authors of the amendment might have been smarter to make it separate, but As written, I have to be honest with you, as written, if it was put up as a vote, it would be all or nothing. There would be no way to separate parts out. Mm-hmm. With the virtual nature of the meeting there, the procedures have changed, so it is unclear how that process could happen if it was desired. So that's why I am being honest with you that right now, as far as my information is, when I cast my vote, it will either be in favor of the entire amendment as written or in favor of none of it as written, that there is no half ground. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, input? I appreciate your thoughts and your input there, and I understand why. Okay, so that is the summary of the amendments, and so now I will quickly discuss the governing board elections. So, next slide. So I listed the current members of the governing board. There are 2 clergy members and 2 lay members who are in essence finishing off their terms. They will be up for election in 2025, the general conference that happens then. There are 1 clergy member and 2 laypersons rotating off, which seems odd because I did put 4 names, but one of those names, Reverend Paul Whiting, actually resigned a few months ago for personal reasons. I do not have any more information on what those personal reasons are. The governing board, because it was so close to general conference, chose to leave the seat open rather than going through their ability to appoint somebody to fill it for the remainder of the term if they wished. And so the other 3 names up there are currently finishing up their term. And that. I should point out that the other 3 names have chosen to run again, and their names will be in the list of potential replacements, for lack of a better term, as well as other members to fill that in there. And so if we go to the next slide, these are the 5 clergy candidates. I put the asterisk by the one who is rerunning, and then the 4 others who are up for consideration, who they are, where they're from. If we go to the slide after that, there are 4 layperson candidates, 2 of whom are currently on the governing board and are rerunning, and then 2 more who are being considered. In case you're confused there, that ICM is the Spanish abbreviation of MCC, and so churches in Spanish-speaking countries often use the ICM abbreviation for their churches. So, next slide. Yes. So we will vote on that day in July, and it will be decided on that day whether to take that amendment as written there. Generally speaking, amendments only happen at general conferences, but on rare occasions they have called a special general conference with voting session for matters that are felt can't wait. It will be up to the people who are advocating for this amendment to advocate whether it should wait to the 2025 general conference or it needs to be handled sooner. That is my best answer to that question. Then the bylaws stay as written, and the authors of the amendment have to decide how to proceed realistically. They are various members of the MCC. I need to look up in the business manual if it tells me who proposed this particular amendment, but I can't tell. Let's see. That one was there. That's that one. Yeah, this is the packet they sent out that I had to summarize for you. According to this, the sponsor of this particular amendment proposal was the Council of Elders and the Governing Board. They worked together on it, but I have no more information on specifics. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. 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 I will have to do a closer reading of the bylaws, but I believe that the Council of Elders and the Governing Board are allowed to propose amendments as themselves. Any churches that wish to propose amendments, I think they have to partner with other churches. Is there anything like that? There's a certain number of churches who have to kind of sign on before it becomes an amendment proposal. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, as far as I can tell, all the amendments proposed this time came from the Council of Elders, which they proposed the first three, and then the Governing Board and the Council of Elders together are proposing this last one. So, those are all good questions. Okay, so as I was saying here, these are the four. I didn't want to waste a lot of time because each one of these candidates has produced a video introducing themselves as well as a biography talking about themselves. And if I had to show you every single one of those videos, this meeting would have taken well over an hour. And realistically, I would encourage you on your own time to please view these if you are interested in learning more about these candidates. I am more than open to any feedback you wish to provide because it is my job as lay delegate to take input from the church and to inform my decision on how to vote. But I will also be doing a lot of prayerful consideration on my own to inform my vote as well. Okay, so the link is up there. It was sent out in an email this week, and I would encourage that we keep that link in the outreach email blasts for the next couple of weeks so that people can see it and choose to look into it there. They're very well done videos. There's lots of information on each of these candidates, and so I highly encourage anybody who wishes to review this and to give me feedback to please do so. I have not made up my mind, or I don't even really have any thoughts on how I'm leaning right now on the governing board candidates there. That is something that there was just a lot of information on them, and I am going to have to do a lot more prayerful consideration on that. And thankfully, I have until the time to vote to do that. We are voting on 4. We are voting on 2 of the 5 clergy nominees and 2 of the 4 layperson nominees. And UFMCC bylaws do state that anybody who is officially elected must be elected with a 50% majority of the votes. That if they don't, then there will have to be a runoff somehow. Any final thoughts, questions on anything that I have brought up? I do thank you for all of your input, and I encourage you to, if in later weeks you wish to pull me aside or get in contact with me, please do so. I am more than happy to hear people's thoughts and feelings on this subject matter.